Welcome in, everybody, to Fantasy Pros. This is the Fantasy Baseball Podcast. It is me, Joey P, Joe Pisapia, and this is Fantasy Pros MLB, baby. We are excited to be here today. We're breaking down the top 50 guys in ADP. That's right. You can go to fantasypros.com right now, and you can see the consensus ADP. You can see the Yahoo, the ESPN, the NFBC, all the letters, CBS, all the letters are there
all
for you.
All the acronyms.
The acronyms abound. And today we're going to break those consensus numbers down, give you a look at those tiers, and give you our thoughts on maybe some players that should be in the top 50 that aren't, that you should be drafting. And Welsh, just that time of year too, getting very excited for baseball. This weekend I saw Juan Soto's first at bat. He had a home run. I love the Mets' new orange hats with the little sunglass baseball. I feel like the sunglasses baseball is a hat you need to have.
I love that. Actually, I would totally do that. I'm also getting excited for it. I have been at camps every morning when I can. I'm going out here, live out here in Arizona, seeing lots of these guys, trying to talk to some players, catching some of the unique things on the backfield. I have been to the Brewers, and very interesting. I was there the day that Manny Margot signed, and you saw Christian Yelich still not working. I thought, they're signing Margot. They're signing Mark Canha. Yelich is maybe behind. I still kind of think he might be behind, but then we also found out that they were going to be losing, who was it? They lost Blake Perkins. They're losing for some period of time. So I'm as excited as you. My process is very different because I am there in the back. I also got to see, here's another one, Joey. I got to see Jim Thome and Andrew Vaughn working with Joey Gallo, and I tweeted about it on this very special, unique little angled thing to try to fix his swing. So I'm definitely seeing some not top 50 players and where we can go deep into drafts, but I have also been catching plenty of these top 50 guys, from Bobby Witt to Julio Rodriguez, Corbin Carroll coming soon. I'm out in their faces preaching Fantasy Pros and also our own drafts.
There you go. I saw Tommy's kid actually in a reel the other day swinging about. He's pretty good. I saw Jim Thome play in Double-A, and everyone the announcer called him Jim Thome at the time because nobody knew when they announced him at the plate. I mean, who was some Double-A kid, right? Jim Thome coming to the plate. And I remember this guy with high socks getting up there, and then he hit a ball over a giant wall, and I was like, wow. That guy is pretty good. I got to keep an eye on him.
I actually, it's unique. His swing when I was a kid, his swing was the one that I kind of wanted to do, that open. And then also I would use that when I used to play the video games and you would create yourself. I would use Jim Thome's swing as my swing.
The archetype. There you go. There you go. Good stuff. Well, speaking of Hall of Famers, we've got a giveaway from a Hall of Famer. Billy Wagner is going to the Hall of Fame, and we've got a signed baseball we're going to give one of you, courtesy of our good friends at pristineauction.com. All you have to do is enter by subscribing to the Fantasy Pros MLB YouTube channel right now. Drop a comment below on this or any video, and that's it. That's all you have to do. And we'll be announcing the winner right here on the channel. So make sure you turn on those notifications so you know when new videos are up and you can claim your prize of the Billy Wagner signed baseball. That's pretty good right there. Billy Wagner, an illustrious and now Hall of Fame career. Let's talk about the guys at the very top of the draft. Shohei Ohtani, he's pretty good. He's at number 1 on our list here. We're going to do these 15 at a clip here, just kind of like those NFBC style drafts, just to give you a heads up. So maybe this is exactly the way, you might be looking at them, but we're going to do it this way. So just deal with it. Shohei Ohtani at the top. Bobby Witt is next. Then you have Aaron Judge, Jose Ramirez, Juan Soto, Gunnar Henderson, Kyle Tucker, Mookie Betts, Elly De La Cruz, then Corbin Carroll, Paul Skenes, Tariq Skubal, Vlad Guerrero, and Francisco Lindor, with Fernando Tatis pulling up the rear. So pretty astounding group of talent, really deep. Here's the thing that I notice, and again, this is a lot to do, this is your basic first round, a lot to do with stylistically how you want to build a team and the strategy of it. I don't feel like there is a pitcher for me personally that I want to take in the first round. None of them grade out that way for me. Based on track record, no matter how good Skubal was last year, no matter how tempting Paul Skenes is to me, no matter how great Chris Sale was last year, there were some years where he wasn't so great. So to me, I'm just an offense first kind of guy at this stage in my fantasy baseball career. And that's how I look at that. I also look at this grouping of, you have Ohtani, Witt, I agree with that. Ramirez and Judge, me personally, I like Ramirez a little bit more this year. Soto, really good. That's kind of my first cutoff. I know you might put Gunnar Henderson in that grouping. I'm curious if you would put Kyle Tucker in there too. How does your strategy enter into this grouping? Is there somebody you would take out of this top 15? And do you think that there is a definitive, I would say, cut for you in the super elite from just the elite.
Okay, so a lot of stuff in there. First, I would say I agree with your sentiment about pitching, though I would turn the table to say that I do believe Skenes and Scuba would be those players. And I think they are worthy of the end of the first round. They're just so uniquely great, but I'm not doing it. So like I am offense first as well. So we just kind of got there in different ways. So I do believe there are unique guys. Looking at the total 15, I think there's some great deals. And I will tell you this, if we talk about from a strategy perspective for just a second, maybe not a lot of people do this. It's a really great way to do your league draft settings is KDS, if you guys are familiar with this, Kentucky Derby system, where if you get the first pick, you get the first pick of the draft. So not like you have one, you can choose. I want the wheel, I want 4, I want 5. The elite characters in this first round, I think, what you said of the top 15 is relatively definitive. The only person I might throw back in that maybe belongs is Julio Rodriguez, another 30-30 potential. Projections are back in, so you could throw him in here. But what we're getting at is like these top 15 players, there's probably 3 tiers inside of the first round, at least how I look at it. There's the elite tier, there's that secondary tier, and then there's that worthy of somewhere in the first round. And then getting to your final question, when you're talking about the elite players, Ohtani, Witt, Judge, I think those are absolute no-brainers. I think Gunnar Henderson belongs in there. I think Jose Ramirez belongs in there. Tucker is fringy right there, but the guy that you're not talking about is I think Elly De La Cruz belongs in there. And I think Elly is a top 5 player. If you're going to steal 60 plus bases, he's worked his swing a little bit, which may be more of a contact approach. If you get the RBIs in there and you get 25 to 30, he could have a 30-60 season. He could have a low-key Ronald Acuna from a couple years ago. So let's circle it back all together. I think there's upwards of 5 to 7 elite players. So you know what? I think from a KDS standpoint, I think having the 5 or 6 spot is awesome because you can take the best of what falls. You could take Elly if you want to chase stolen bases, maybe not in a points league. You could get a Gunner. You could get a Jose Ramirez who tends to fall. And you're going to get the great player coming back. So I think that 5 to 6 is really great in KDS. And I also think the wheel is a good spot because if we're talking about more than 1 or 2 players we didn't list being first round worthy, you legit could have a draft where we've talked about Corbin Carroll and Julio, or you could get Lindor and Julio Rodriguez, or you could even throw in like a Bryce Harper in there. So I think that 14-15 spot is really, really good as well. I kind of want to stay away from that maybe 8 to 12, but there's a really good high core elite players that you can chase here. And the wheel is stronger, and the wheel being the end of the draft because we have more viable players than our first round worthy.
I agree. I love the wheel this year. It's interesting you said you like the middle spot there, that's 6 or 7, because I just did that Beat the Shift podcast of Ariel Cohn, friend of the show. We did a mock draft on there. We were talking about our favorite spots. And I said, look, I drafted from the 12 of 15, which is a little bit of a challenge as opposed to having right at the wheel. But he likes to be in the middle too. And my struggle with that is, sometimes you just miss out on some of these runs and it's just very difficult. Sometimes you feel like in the middle of the draft, like you're kind of getting it from both ends. Like somebody's drafted this, by the time it comes back to you have to make that decision. Do you want to continue to draft the first baseman they're flying off the table, or do you want to pivot to something else? And if you make the wrong decision, well, when it comes back around to you, you're kind of out of luck. So I like to be in a little bit more control. What's that?
Maybe start the run. That's
well, you can try, but sometimes in the middle, nobody cares, and I also like having more time to watch the board. And that's something to me that's very important also. I like being in the top 5 or the bottom 3 spots because I feel like you have more time to see the board develop and you can make some better choices and see how people are drafting. Where you're in the middle, I feel like it's just right there back and forth. I like the extra time and then slam those 2 picks in there.
You know what's unique about what you're saying too, and we're not, this isn't a live episode we're doing, but you guys can comment in the comments below here. I'd be curious. I actually think there's a bigger window for people's favorite draft position than there are in years past. Most people would be like, oh, I just want like 1 or 2. And if I don't get that, I want the wheel. I really think with how strong that first round talent is, when you can get Kyle Tucker at 9 or Corbin Carroll at 12 or Jose Ramirez at 5 or Julio and Tatis on the wheel, I think you might find a bigger amount of numbers that people really like. But feel free in the comments below. Tell us your favorite and what you think the best draft position is. And we'll see if there's any trend if we see a lot of the same area.
Look, Tatis Lindor at the wheel sounds awesome. Like, I mean, that's
pretty good.
It's a great way to start a draft. Or Vlad Guerrero and Tatis or Alvarez and Vlad. Like I said, the only guys that I would take out of the pitchers, Welsh and I disagree on that. But again, that's just a matter of how I like the builds of my teams. I don't like the way they look when I come out of there with pitchers in the first round or even second round for that matter. In fact,
that's what happens to me too, by the way. That's like, again, I feel like you and I come to the same conclusion.
Shallow leagues, I'm okay, Welsh. Like if it's a 10-team league, sure. Absolutely. 10-team league, you can figure it out. 12-team, trickier, but doable. When you get into 14 or 15, I think it's very, very tough.
But you do have an advantage if you're at 15 and you can take a first-round talent like, let's say, Fernando Tatis Jr., and then you could slap on Paul Skenes and have, the number one pitcher. There is an advantage to it. But again, like I feel like you and I come to the same conclusion, but the way we get there is just a little bit different, where it's like, I think that's another reason why the wheel is kind of unique, because you could get Skubal and Skenes. But I also agree, I don't like the builds. I don't really like the builds I have after I spend really, really high on a pitcher.
You know what else I like? I like the grouping of pitchers I'm getting later. McClanahan, Rodon, I'm getting Sandy Alcantara. I'm getting all these guys who are ace-like, or have ace moments at least in them. And I'm getting them so much later, I feel like I'm making up ground. Now, that might change as we get towards the end of March. Those ADPs might start to elevate the more these guys prove they're healthy and look good in spring training. But so far, Justin Steele, another guy. I think in that draft, you could go watch that show or listen to that show. I think my staff was something like, I had Blake Snell was the one guy I went for. And then I had with Steele and Rodon. And I think I had Alcantara too as my fourth guy. I mean, I'll go to war with that in a 15-team league.
Solid.
That's a
15. I thought that was like a 12. Yeah, no, that's really good in a 15.
14. I think we did 14. We split the difference between 14. The 12 and the 15.
Sorry, he's a numbers guy. It does not make him anxious. He's a numbers guy.
He's like, he wanted to split the difference. I don't know. All right, Welsh, let's get to the next tier here of our guys. Then the top 50. This is 16 through 30 here. So we'll start with Yordan Alvarez. And then you have Zach Wheeler, Bryce Harper, Freddie Freeman, Julio Rodriguez, Jackson Chourio, Ketel Marte, Ronald Acuna, Logan Gilbert, Jarren Duran, Trey Turner, Rafael Devers, Matt Olson, and then Corbin Burns and William Contreras pulling up the rear. This is about targets for me. When you start to look at that second into third round, depending on the depth of your league, it's about targets. Wheeler, I think, is an interesting one. Again, too early for me. Chourio is a big target of mine. I just took him in a recent draft there. Acuna is extremely interesting. And the more shallow the league, the more willing I am to wait for Acuna, because I feel like the replacement value is easier to find early on. I can find somebody on the waiver wire in April. Boom, I'm into May. Hopefully I get Ronald Acuna back. And then it's trying to figure out, do you believe in Jarren Duran's incredible season? We do. But again, now the ADP, you have to pay for it. This is actually, it's funny because it's guys that you, I think, look at and say, you have a favorite, Welsh, in this group or two. Like everybody does. So who are your favorites? Because I feel like I'm a Chourio guy. I am probably a Ketel Marte guy. I'm an Acuna guy in the right spot. But who are the targets in this next tier here when you go from 16 to 31 that you find yourself targeting specifically?
Well, one I really like, and it's not meant to be a homer, but it is Ketel Marte. I mean, Ketel Marte's season last year, absolutely absurd. 292, 36 homers, 7 stolen bases, spray chart kind of across the board from an underlying hitting perspective. If you're looking at like Baseball Savant, it was like top 5 percentile in like expected slug and expected batting average. He barreled the ball, hit on average, hard hit was 53.8. That was top 4 percentile in the league. He also is not striking out anymore. It's a hitter-friendly environment. And, whether he's leading off, which is great, and you've got guys like Corbin Carroll hitting behind you, or you're hitting a more predominant RBI standpoint, Corbin Carroll was the number one on base score. It was like some absurd over 50% when he got on base, he scored. That works really, really well for RBI opportunities. So I think Ketel is in a really great spot where he sets himself apart positionally, even though there are some great deals at second base positionally. I just really, really like Ketel Marte in that 20 spot. You mentioned Jackson Chourio. I think Chourio is an absolute, just no-brainer here. The 30-30 potential. The cost is, it's a bit high. It's up there, but he should be going around the Julio Rodriguez range, and he has a chance to be a first rounder. And I will say, you mentioned Jarren Duran. How about I go on the other side too? How about Rafael Devers? Devers is boring for a lot of people, because what's one thing that we've noticed in the first 15 and you're getting into the second 15, which does make it difficult to pivot. What is that? It is stolen bases. There's a lot of guys that are giving you quality stolen bases. And what I mean by that is good batting averages and good homer potential. You don't necessarily get that everywhere else. You might sacrifice batting average or sacrifice homers. You get great stolen bases with guys like Chourio and Julio Rodriguez and Tatis and kind of across the board. There's only a handful of players that you're going to, sacrifice that for. And obviously Harper and Alvarez fit that. But Devers is one of those players at the back end of the 30s that falls even a little bit further. Even at 15-man, you could get him in the third round, sometimes third or fourth. Mid 30 homers, 100 potential with high average. You got Bregman that's there. You've got Jarren Duran, who's a table setter. I really do think in a world where we need to start paying attention to more power, especially that comes with batting average, Rafael Devers is still a fantastic fantasy player. So I actually kind of get him a decent amount, but it tends to be I get a little bit of a discount on him. So a lot of good players to target here. Really do love Devers.
You mean the next DH of the Red Sox, Rafael Devers?
No, actually.
Why?
No,
he makes enough errors. I mean,
no.
Yeah.
Well, if you ask Rafael Devers, it's no. He's going to be the third
How about
baseman.
I tell Rafael Devers? How about you tell him, hey, buddy, you look at Mookie Betts, he goes and plays every position you want him to play. Mookie Betts will play third base, he'll catch, he'll play pitcher if you need him to, he'll make a start. I mean...
How about a Toronto flip for Vladdy and Devers? Vladdy's not going to re-sign. Devers wants to be a third baseman. There you go. They're going to go put out like Paul DeYoung or something. I don't even know who's there, if that's the right name. But
going back to something you mentioned real quick too, the Jackson Chourio back-to-back ADP with Julio Rodriguez. I took Chourio over Julio recently, and you look at Chourio's stats last year. His chats: 21 homers, 22 steals. Drove in 79 runs, 80 steals. 80 runs scored.
That'd be amazing.
275 batting average. That would be amazing. You look at Julio's stats last year, right? 20 home runs, 24 stolen bases, 273 batting average, 68 RBI, 76 runs scored. Now, Chourio's rookie season was rough. A lot of learning curve, first season in the big leagues, all that. And he still got to that. Now, Julio, we've dealt with a lot of slow starts. And I'm getting a little tired of making excuses for Julio. And and I understand, and I was the guy who was pounding the table last year about the lack of lineup protection there for him. I know Rosarena will be there from the jump this time around, but still, Welsh, I'm thinking about sophomore slump potential with him versus the incredible slow starts for Julio, and wondering if maybe we all just have overrated Julio a little bit, and maybe that ballpark's just killing him. I think I feel more comfortable with Chourio this year over Julio. Curious, do you have a strong preference? Because I have a strong preference of Chourio over Julio this season.
I mean, I think
the stats are really similar. Like you look at it, you're like, man, this was kind of the same guy, but one guy's 20 and was just breaking the big leagues and looked like by the end of the year he really got it. Wow. Whereas the other guy, it's like
he's 24. It's not like he's the old vet or anything.
No,
like
but
that.
It's this constant roller coaster with Julio, where by 24 and 3 or 4 years in the league, I want him to hit that next level, and he hasn't done it yet. That's my frustration with him.
Yeah, and I understand the frustration with Julio. I mean, I think the positive is like there's not a crazy amount of underlying stuff that completely fell apart. Like he still barrels really well. Hard hit percentage went down by 4%, while the strikeouts ticked up about 1%. That coincided, though, with struggle against off-speed pitches by a pretty dramatic amount. But also he wasn't pulling the ball. His pull percentage went down by 6%. So that might have just been, the approach of pitches seen a little bit different. He saw a little bit more breaking pitches. Maybe he was a little too zealous early on in counts. But also like it's a bad pitching environment, or hitting environment. So you say all of this stuff and you go, well, I could pivot off of him. He still did all of this. 270 being a 2020 guy. We still see a lot of the underlying stuff that is completely supportive, and nothing that I look at that I'm like, man, this is going to completely fall apart. The top 2 pitch types he saw, he hit 270 or higher, and that's sliders, sinkers, and fastballs. Like this is still a really great hitter, aggressive runner with a little bit more run potential that I feel like I want to look at his BABIP too. I'm willing to give a tiny bit of the benefit of the doubt, though he had a higher BABIP this year than in previous years. So we'll have to see. I don't think you're going wrong if you take Chourio over Julio Rodriguez. Better hitting environment, maybe runs a little bit more, but I don't think you can count out a 30-30 season coming from Julio.
I like the hitting environment, and Milwaukee's always been a good spot for home runs historically. Like it's always been a good. So are you on Team Julio or are you on Team Churro?
I'm on Team Julio here. I have Julio ranked higher than Churro. Do you actually have Churro ranked
I have
higher
Churro
than
ranked. Ranked higher than Julio. So I mean, again, it's splitting hairs, but like that's what we're doing in the second round. Like you're splitting hairs. You're trying to find the player in the best situation you can get because. You can't. Well, they say you can't lose your league in the first or second round, right? I mean, probably not. These are all really good players for the most part, but I want to get everything I can out of the best players that are on the board, and I just feel like ballpark factor is better. Maybe the upside potential is better, and Julio's had a couple years in the league to show me that next benchmark for his productivity, and it just hasn't happened yet. And Maybe I'm just being impatient. It's possible.
Sophomore slumps. I mean, hey, the Churrio's going to get attacked differently this year as well. Pitchers are going to have the reports on, hey, what did this guy do really well and how do we need to alter and how do we make him struggle in the first half? I think the same thing happened with Julio. Yet I would say like, he was actually the career best expected batting average. He had XBA was 275. Slug was still there. I mean, all of the numbers were there with slight dips and a little less pull. I think there's a lot that he can work with, and we'll have to see how Churro now is going to adjust to this league with new kick changeups and new versions of splitters.
The kick changeup,
all the
Clay
new
Holmes
pitches this
kick
year.
Changeup. I'm very excited about that.
Yeah.
I've seen like 74 reels about that already. Maybe it's just as simple as Julio just needed an Arozarena all year round. And that's probably the case. So fingers crossed. But again, a lot of that's the studies that come out about that Seattle ballpark have been really discouraging.
It sucks.
It does suck.
I'm surprised they haven't made any
fighting an uphill battle.
It's interesting. I wonder. You have Baltimore, who is a very pitcher-friendly environment, who's bringing in the left field wall to make it more.
The last couple of years, yeah.
But then at the same time, though, you look at Seattle and it's like, is this the time to make it more hitter-friendly? Maybe it is, maybe it's not. You have some of the best pitchers in the world in Gilbert.
No, you know what it is? I think it's
and
time to
Kirby.
spend a little bit more money and get some more bats in that lineup, and stop pretending like you can't spend any money.
I think they would have loved Alonso, but they didn't do it.
I mean, there was a stunning statistic. I don't know if I have it on hand. I could look and see if I do, but it had to do with the Seattle Mariners. I think they were 43-7 or something to that effect when they scored 3 runs or more at home. 47. It's like crazy stat. Like all you got to do is get these guys like 3 runs.
Well,
and
that was a challenge. When you have sub 3 ERA guys, you just blink and you just throw behind you and you've got a sub 3 ERA guy that you're putting out on the mound every week. Yeah.
43-7 at home when they scored 3 runs or more.
That's crazy.
Crazy. Also crazy is if you're not using the ultimate cheat code for your drafts, and that's Draft Wizard. So use Draft Wizard to get expert rankings, perform quick mock drafts, and you can receive real-time advice during your draft to build a winning team. You can practice your draft strategies in just minutes. With the fast, realistic mock drafts, you can back out your picks. You don't like a pick the way the things are going. You know what? I want to go back and do it again and do it right. You can. Or you don't like the way things are going. You could restart the whole damn thing, or you could do 5 in about, 10 minutes. It goes so fast. It's a great way to get prepared, flex your muscles, start training for draft days that are coming up before you know it. You get live draft advice too, and player recommendations. You can even see the categories, where you're behind in certain spots too, where you would have to build your rosters, and it's going to flex those draft muscles that you're going to need in just a few weeks. So if you're ready to win, head to fantasypros.com/MLB Draft Wizard or download the MLB Draft Wizard app today and start drafting smarter. All right, let's get to the next tier, Welsh. Here we go. You ready? I am. Manny Machado, Jackson Merrill, Garrett Crochet, Chris Sale. Here's where the tempting pitchers and the returns on investment start to come. Jazz Chisholm, Austin Riley, Dylan Cease, Cole Reagans, Corey Seager, Pete Alonso, Emmanuel Clase. Too early for closers for Joey P. We all know that. Garrett Cole, Jose Altuve, Blake Snell. Then you've got George Kirby, Kyle Schwarber, Albies, Langford, and Harris. So what we've done here is looking at the rest of the 50 with Yamamoto being the last guy pulling up the rear. So in picks 31 through 50, there's a lot of talent. This is when some of those starting pitchers, to me, I start to say, okay, I love the consistency of Dylan Cease. Blake Snell, I'm willing to start a rotation in fantasy this year with Blake Snell. That bullpen is so good. That offense is so good. I'm a little worried about the defense of the Dodgers, to be honest with you, with all the things and moving pieces going around. I think that might be the one Achilles heel, but Blake Snell could win 20 games just by being okay. It is stunning to me. Ozzie Albies, another guy that I think has become a real value. Just a couple of years ago, we were looking at him around the turn, and now you're getting him in the late 40s. There's a lot to pick apart here, but let's start with the pitching here, because I feel like that's where you're starting to see the pitching really pop in this 31 to 50 range. So if Snell is my guy, do you have one in particular like, yeah, I love this return on investment in this range?
Oh, yeah, 100% I do. And if people have been watching, they know exactly who it is. This is Garrett Crochet time for me. So It's funny because we're doing a bigger group here of 30 through 50, because there's blankets of like the bottom end of this are some prime targets of mine, but Crochet is one of my top targets. I love getting a value on him. I've gotten him in early drafts in the 4th round, probably more of a 3rd rounder. I even took him in the 2nd round of Tout, just bigger, 15 team, kind of closer to the wheel. I really, really love Garrett Crochet. Over 200 strikeouts and under 150 innings last year. At the tippy top, really just of everything. His 3.58 ERA, White Sox doesn't tell the whole story. He had an expected ERA of 2.85. His strikeouts were near the tippy top. I believe it was in the top 2 percentile of the league at 35%. Only walks around 5%. We'll see what happens in Boston. It's a little bit more of a hitter-friendly environment, but this is a guy that could lead the league, and I think in some projections have him leading the league in strikeouts. So I love Garrett Crochet, specifically when he's going off as like SP 6 or 7 or 8. So in this 30 range, he is a prime target. There's lots of good picks in here. Merrill is a nice, safe pick. I'm not sure what the total offensive upside looks like, but he's super safe. Jazz Chisholm, tons and tons of upside, especially stolen bases at 3rd. And, mentioning these pitchers, it's not just Sale and Crochet. Just a couple picks later, it's Cease, it's Reagans. But I actually specifically think Sale and Crochet are kind of their own tier. So those two are both big targets. And I would say if we are looking at this in 15 team, this is the 3rd round. Prime pitching area for me. I don't want to wait too long. I'm not like hey, give me pitchers in the 7th, 8th round. I'm okay with it.
More me. I
just
like that. I like that the 35 to 50 overall pitchers. I just think is a really good group this year. Just the way it's fallen. It's a solid group. It's not like that every year. I do agree. Crochet is absolutely one to target. The upside there is enormous as long as he can handle the pressure of Boston, which I feel like he can. What I love about Crochet is, despite the fact he's a bigger kid, I feel like the mechanics are really sound. It's a really easy to repeat delivery, which you don't always get with the bigger dudes. Sometimes there's a lot of moving parts there and they don't always find consistency. Let me look how long it took Randy Johnson all those years to put all of his mechanics together. But Crochet is incredibly tempting. Now, I don't have a closer in my top 50. Is Clase in your top 50?
Yeah, I mean, so like in an NFBC draft and hold, I think you've got to push closers up in that format. In a roto, you got to push them up a tiny bit more as well. It's not the format where you're going to punt. In head-to-head in 12 teams, I think it's a little easier to get by. I think it's easier to get by the smaller the league, and if it's not roto and NFBC. So I do have Class A kind of like right in this territory. I think I also took him in Tout in like the 4th round or something like that, because this is a league winner as far as saves go. He's going to be at the tippy top. Cleveland is a team that is always up there with tons and tons of win opportunities and save opportunities. So yeah, I think he's right there, but I am like overall in agreement with you of paying high costs. I'm more likely to pay the later closers than I am Class A, but I think in a world of like questionable closers, I guess you kind of can also look at it and go, wow, Devin Williams, Clase, and Hader, and Edwin Diaz are still all there, so that's a good sign. I think there's a lot of rotational saves in other spots that if you're going to spend a high investment, take a guy that there's no question about his job and that he has lots of opportunity. That's why I like Clase so much. But me actually pulling the trigger, don't love it, don't want to.
Now, there's an Atlanta Braves player that stands out to me in this group, and it's Albies because second base
I thought you were going to crap on the other guy.
No. See, I'm going to say something nice. Albies, to me, have we forgotten how good of a player he is? And do we look at second base and not think that it's got a lot of issues and problems with some of the investments you can make? And once again, he's not that far removed from being a guy that you would take at the turn. He's got power. He's got speed. He hits an incredible lineup. So to me, that's the biggest value. But Welsh, if I am pressed to kick somebody out of the top 50, it would be Michael Harris. That's right. I feel like Michael Harris, in the top 50 players, I want impact guys. I want guys who are going to drop 40 home runs, guys who are going to, like, Michael Harris does a little of everything, and he does it pretty well. but nothing is like off the charts to me. I know you're probably going to argue batting average, and batting average is hard to come by these days. So he's a nice player, but I feel like he's somebody statistically that I can comp at least 85% of a couple rounds later. So is there anybody that you want to kick out of the top 50 before we find guys that we want to put in to the top 50 that aren't?
Well, I want to speak on one thing. It's interesting because I'll push back about the Albies thing and to your Harris thing, which is interesting because I actually think like, yeah, Albies is fine, has some injury stuff, but like I think you can get 90 to 95% of Albies probably 40 picks later in Marcus Semien.
Wait a minute.
And Marcus Semien.
Oh,
Marcus Semien is completely fallen off the table for everybody.
Maybe.
And you got this healthy, revamped Texas team where he's going to be leading off in front of Seager and Langford and them. Semien, I don't want to dismiss Albies, but if you use like, hey, I can get 90% of this player later, my argument would be against Albies, and Altuve really would be players I could push down, but the position kind of stinks. But
in 2023, Albies had 33 homers, 109 RBI, and scored 96 runs. He has had 300 run scored seasons, almost 4 if you count the 96. He's had 230 home run seasons. He's had 2 seasons where he's driven in 100 runs. Now, look, lineup placement has a lot to do with Albies this year and his value, and that might get a little weird this year because Profar is there and Harris is there. So they've got lots of options of how they want to approach the beginning of this order. And then Acuna coming back is going to throw a wrench into that too. But man, I look at Albies being a potential impact player at a tough position. Semien I like too. And that being said, maybe we should talk about guys we want to put into the top 50. So Welsh, why don't you go first? I've got my names. You've got yours. Maybe this is a little bit of looking ahead. And I feel like that's a very healthy thing to do because the best way to draft is kind of looking at ADP as polling and what the consensus and everybody think things are. And then you might want to think about what does the first, 50 players of 2026 look like? And that's probably how you should be drafting. So with that in mind, give me 3 names that you think should be in the top 50 that aren't currently being drafted as such.
Well, I'm going to give a caveat because 2 of the players you picked would have been my choices. Specifically, one massively would have been mine because there's a player that did make the top 50, Wyatt Langford, who I love. I'm very adamant about Wyatt Langford. I think 5-tool player, 2020 potential. I like Langford more than Michael Harris, and I think Michael Harris might be going like 1 spot ahead of him, or they're like right near each other. And I guess he's right behind. So caveat that 2 of yours I'm in complete lockstep with. So I dug a tiny bit deeper with a few names that I think can be top 50 and jump in there. First one you're going to hate, it's Jacob deGrom. I'm just going to throw this out here that he is in, I think, 60 on ADP. This is the FantasyPros ADP that's bringing in all the different sites here. And his rank is all over the board. I believe he's the 36th overall player on Yahoo's platform. NFBC, he goes higher. He's all across the board. The one thing we know about Jacob deGrom is the lack of innings. He's not going to have 200 innings. He's not going to have 180. He's not going to have 100.
Is he going to have 100? He hasn't had 100 since 2019, Welsh.
And I think
a long time ago.
The team, if they can get 120 out of him, it would be a huge
We weren't
get.
even working here in 2019. Okay, that's how long ago that was.
The world was different
forever.
The world
was a different place.
Yeah, it was a different place.
It was pre-COVID. COVID, the pandemic hadn't even. That's how long it's been since Jacob deGrom has
guess what?
Just 100 innings in a season.
He's ready to be back. He's ready to come back. I remember doing PitchCon. He'll be coming on here next week. If people are checking up, but Nick Pollock had come on the panel I was on his PitchCon conference, and he had said in a 12-team format and a head-to-head format with less players, Jacob deGrom is probably arguably a top 5 overall pitcher across the board. And I think that's what I'm talking about here. Yes, the injury is so apparent, but yes, the cost is built in. So if you're talking about who deserves to be a top 50 player, listen, I like George Kirby. I was the biggest George Kirby guy last year. I'm like, he's going to win the Cy Young, low walks. He's going to up his strikeouts. He didn't, and he got into his head again. But like Jacob deGrom's upside is exponentially higher because he could lead the league in strikeouts. If from a per game basis, Jacob deGrom will probably be a top 5 fantasy pitcher from a per game basis. But the question obviously exists about like, well, how many damn games is he going to play? That is kind of built in here, but right in that top 50 range, I think Jacob deGrom belongs in that, or at least he is in, he justifiably can be in there. And in some platforms, he already is a top 50 player. My other 2, Christian Walker. I love Christian Walker. Maybe he doesn't need to be a top 50 player. I think he's going to perform in a top 50 player. Probably going to have 35 homers in this great pull side hitter friendly environment in Houston. I wouldn't be shocked at 100 on that side of run and RBI, and he can hit for average. He is one of my main targets at first base. And then finally, the complete opposite end. This is a risk, but Junior Caminero legitimately has a shot to be a 30-plus home run guy at third base. He could be everything we're drafting Manny Machado for. He's younger. He's probably not going to steal a whole bunch. The environment of Tampa Bay around him isn't great, but it's in a minor league park. So I think Junior Caminero's upside is going to continue to grow, and I think he can be a top 50 player. Christian Walker can, and Jacob deGrom could all be top 50 overall players. Maybe by the time people are watching this at the end of draft season, but assuredly value-wise in season.
Vientos and Caminero, my two biggest targets at third base this year. I want one of those guys, and I'm willing to be aggressive on them. And I feel like, if you don't get Jose Ramirez, I'm just going to wait. And then when it's Caminero Vientos time, whatever that round is, or where ADP is suggesting, I'm going to be a little bit earlier and just make sure I lock one of those guys in. All right, so those are some good names here. Caminero, deGrom. Give me one more.
I gave you all of them. I gave deGrom, Walker, and Junior Caminero.
Oh, you did give me Christian Walker. I'm sorry. Yeah. I thought I must have zoned out.
I'll take yours because the first two of yours, Joe, I want you to go through yours. Number one is a great one, and I'm fully on board with. Number two was the first person I thought of when you presented this to me, of course. So let's hear
let's start there. Let's start with James Wood then at 67 overall right now. And James Wood, a guy that I think is going to be the breakout star of this year. And I think the Nats are going to cover a lot of games. If you're in the betting market, I think the Nats are going to be very plucky, very dangerous. They're a young team. They're better than I think people are going to give them credit for. Exciting, athletic. And James Wood really is, James Wood, if you go back and look at the minor league track record, he's a 300 hitter with a 400 on base and a 500 slugging. That means you're basically going to become an elite major league player. More often than not. That is the elite slash that you're looking for. And I don't mean the guy from Guns N' Roses. I'm talking about James Wood. And I'm looking at him this year being ready to just be the rocket ship that takes off. So I think it's crazy that he's not in the top 50. I mean, he's not even in the top 60, to be honest, which is kind of just bizarre to me. The next guy on my list, Brent Rooker.
Love that one.
I want impact guys, right? My top 50. I think Brent Rooker's going to have 40 plus home runs this year. That's a big impact. And you look at the move to the Sacramento ballpark, PCL area, right? Maybe balls jumping out a little bit more. Lawrence Butler got off to a good start, helps too. I want some protection around him. Blade had a good finish to the season. So there's some pieces around him now in that lineup. I think the A's are going to be another plucky team. The A's in the American League and the Nationals in the NL. I think those are two teams that this year are going to be maybe not the biggest in the win column, but they're going to be competitive and they're going to drive some people crazy. And I want pieces of them because they're very cost effective this year. And the last guy is at 63 is Pablo Lopez. So, I know you want to put deGrom in there and you make a good case. Like I know what the upside is of deGrom. He is the best pitcher on the planet when healthy. I just haven't seen him in the planet since 2019.
He's in orbit. He is flying around the universe.
He's like the stars that burn out, and then they become these dwarf planets and then they crystallize and then explode. Like that's it. I would love nothing more to see Jacob deGrom be healthy and successful this year. But I'm looking at Pablo Lopez and I don't understand. This is a guy that has 200 strikeout potential. I know the ERA was over 4 last year, but the xERA and some of the FIP numbers suggest it was more like a 3.75, which is more in line the year before. The year before, he had a massive total of strikeouts as well. He continues to just be a really solid starter. I think when you look at the Minnesota Twins, there's some problems there, but I think the Minnesota Twins, if the health cooperates just a little bit more, are once again going to be right at the top of that division. But 198 strikeouts last year, 234 the year before. But maybe most importantly, he's like the anti-deGrom because 2022, 32 starts, 2023, 22 starts, 2024. Guess how many? 32 starts. The guy makes 32 starts every year. And I play in a lot of head-to-head leagues, so I value that. So Pablo Lopez, to me, I think is being undervalued because the ERA was higher than it was expected. Strikeouts are still there. The team is still solid. The division is still, I think, well within their grasp. So Lopez is another guy to me that I would put in that conversation with some of these other pitchers, and I would certainly take him over a closer. But as you said, in NFBC, saves are worth a little bit more. But we love to hear from all of you. Who do you want to put in the top 50, and who do you want to take out of the top 50? That's the question I'm asking everybody on the YouTube channel. So drop your comments below, and who knows, that comment might be worth a Billy Wagner autographed baseball Hall of Famer. Billy Wagner, by the way.
I don't have that behind me. I got a lot of those
balls that Welsh has behind him. Now, one Billy Wagner, and guess what? He's not allowed to win this one. So drop your comments below, give us your picks, and ring the bell till it goes ding for notifications when you subscribe to Fantasy Pros MLB. And don't forget to subscribe to the podcast. And remember, we're here live on Wednesday afternoon, so come join us. And when you ring the bell for notifications, you won't miss those live streams, so you can get your questions answered. Good times as always, breaking down the top 50 players. And of course, we have amazing content here on the channel, which we'll be producing every single day before you know it. That'll do it for us, but the story of the game goes on. For the Welsh, I'm Joey P. We'll see you next time, kids.